Alright, what's going on, GLG crew? This is GLG Garrett coming at you with a in-depth guide to Binsmoke Reiju. So similar formatting to Dan's video on Bonnie. I know that a lot of people were asking for gameplay. I found it difficult to, kind of get like effective gameplay because sometimes you don't always play against somebody that has, is like the best representative of that deck. And, I only have so much time to, be on the sim and record games. So I ended up just doing this. I think this is a good way to kind of talk over the matchups. And then, yeah. So, anyways, let's get into it. So, Reiju, obviously, blue purple. When you return a Dawn, you draw a card on your turn. So let's get into the deck list. So first with the 7.5 deck list. So this was the list that I made the video with. I was not running the Porsche at the time. I felt like getting down to low Dawn counts really hurt you in the black yellow Luffy matchup. So I was not a big fan of that play style at the time. And I also just felt like you were missing just like the consistency of, right, like you needed the chopper. Like the chopper, such a great utility card to add. Like the chump blocker that ramps the Dawn was so good, helping you like get to judge and stuff, but sometimes it's a little awkward. Anyways, enough of that. There's a video about the 7.5 list, but we're in a new we're in a new set now. So let's go to the 08 deck list. So things that changed: I put the Porsches in. I added the OP08 Black Marias. The choppers are gone and the puddings are gone. So I know not playing pudding is probably like a pretty hot take. I just really wanted to maximize the consistency of this deck. While still making it competitive. So pudding to me was like, it's a really good card that could win you games. But at the same time, like when you're really, if you play Reiju, you know that there's games where you see everything and it feels like the best deck in the world. And then there's games where your hand is like 2K counters and puddings, and Porsches, and you're like, what do I do? And you just keep drawing into 2K counters, and there's like nothing you could play out, so you swing 8, and then maybe you get a searcher vet, then you swing 9, whatever. It felt like terrible to me. Like that was the worst feeling, right? So I took those out. I took out the choppers because the Black Maria kind of does what it was trying to do, but like way better. And also like the timing of playing pudding is also kind of taken by the timing of playing Black Maria. For me at least, like pudding was kind of like one of those, there's a lull kind of in that when you're at 4 or 5 Dawn and you don't really have anything to play, and they're at like 6 cards in hand, so you swing 7, they take, and then you pudding, then swing 5, and then you're going into like 6, 7 Dawn next turn. But for me, I felt like playing down the Black Maria and then especially if it's like mid to late game, you know, being able to ramp up to like 8 Dawn and then going into 10 the next turn is so much better because you could play out Judge. You can go like double Ichiji, right? You can go like Porsche into Ichiji, into another Ichiji. Like, I don't know, you can just do so much more because you have so much more Dawn. And yeah, I also don't feel like we really need the choppers. One, because it's another since we're adding the Black Marias, it's like another card that kind of takes away from the consistency of, you know, the Vinsmoke side of things. Obviously, you can search it off Porsche, but I feel like that's less important than being able to cycle through your Vinsmoke stuff, get everything you need in the trash, you know, be set up for Judge, stuff like that. So I think this way just leads you to have less of those games where you have nothing to do. So yeah, I'm really loving it. Let's see, the Kaya. I took out one Sanji, put a Kaya because kind of similar to what I was saying is when you have nothing to do but you have the Kaya, like you can always play that out, draw two, and you know sometimes you draw exactly what you needed, you know, to set up a play for that turn, which sets up a play for the next turn. So I wouldn't really Kaya turn one unless I had like two of the big HGs in my hand. Then it's just obviously, you know, for obvious reasons you want to get those in your trash, and then you're drawing into two cards. You could draw into the Porsche, you could draw into Stage for next turn, you could draw into the little HG. So I like it, just that utility. And I'm still running the Yonjis. Again, for the consistency reason, having another body to play out is really good. It's essentially like a 2-cost 6k blocker, which I see like in no world where that's bad. You know, I think that in its place, maybe people would run puddings or, you know, like that queen blocker or the choppers, but I personally feel like this is better. I know that there's so many different ways to like, you know, build in the technicalities of this deck. I just feel like with my experience so far that this is like kind of led me to have the most success. Yeah, so in the next, we'll see. Yeah, no pudding. We already kind of talked about this. It's still a really good card, and I would if I were taking this deck to a big tournament, I would heavily consider running it, playing pudding at 1 or 2. Just because, like I mentioned earlier, like it can straight up win you games. If you're playing like an L, dropping pudding, you know, ripping like 5 cards out of their hand is so good. Black yellow, sometimes they don't respect the pudding. And that's a big thing you'll notice is like most good players respect the pudding, except for Anels, because that's like, you know, that's their style of play, is having a giant hand, and if they play around it, they like kind of lose themselves the game. So, but with everything else, like I've noticed good black yellow Luffy's players play around it heavily. Good Lucci players will usually play around it. Sometimes they don't have an option. So getting a pudding off on a Lucci feels really good, especially when you have, you know, already like two bodies on board. So you pudding So, you know, swing 5, 5, 7, or whatever you have on board, right? Yeah, so if I were to take anything out, it would probably be. It's really tough. This list feels so tight to me, but I would probably take out two of the 2Ks. It would probably be the Kaya and the Sanji. Those feel like the least impactful cards. So, anyways, something to consider if you are taking it to a big tournament. I think that, like I said, pudding can win you games. I don't like having to play it. Right, so there's situations where they have like 8, 9 cards, and you're like, I have to play pudding, but I could play Black Maria and ramp, or like I could play, you know, another Ichiji, or I could play Porsche into whatever Reiju to draw cards. And so for me, like, just taking it out, just I don't give myself the option to like have to play it, and I don't feel like it's affected the, you know, the play of the deck too much. Yeah, so going into some matchups. So I'm gonna kind of start with the kind of easier, or like, you know, more 50-50 matchups, and then we'll kind of finish with the tougher one. So I'll start with Lucci, because Lucci's like super well represented right now. However, I think that in 08 specifically, like they a lot of decks take out the Sabo that pops 2 characters, which I think was pretty good against Reiju. You know, popping a 5 and a 3, like that's so easy for them to get that reduction, right? Tempest Cake Leader Swing, that's like your Ichiji and Reiju. So or your Judge and your Reiju or whatever. But now they're taking that out, and I've also noticed that a lot of them only run like 8 2K counters. So for an aggro deck like Reiju, you're just constantly swinging into life, and you could pretty much rush them down. So obviously, if you don't see like Ichiji early, you don't even have to see Porsche, but you need to see Ichiji. Like, you need to be getting out bodies on turn 2. So whatever that looks like, just to kind of create that off balance in the tempo. Nami, we took out the tech cards for Nami, like Gion and Pudding, so I guess in that way it gets a little tougher. But I feel like, you know, it's gonna sound the same for every matchup. But if you get out the Ichiji early, you're set up so well to where, you know, you get that 7K swing next turn, 9K swing. And I think that if you're like an experienced player that's that just kind of knows the general deck list of Nami, you should win. I don't know if I don't think I've ever lost to a Nami in real life. And I think that comes down to just like getting inside their minds of what they want to do, right? Like they want to get the most out of their event counters, so, you know, they're gonna counter in like the most optimal way possible. So, you know, I try to take like these awkward swings to where, you know, it's not optimal for them. Also checking their trash is huge. I feel like not enough people do that. But if you know, like, okay, he's got, he's got all four, you know, what's that one called? Galling? Gavel. Yeah. He's got all four gavels, and, or let's say this one's a little better. He's got all four white snakes in his trash, right? So now I know I don't have to swing sixes. I could swing five, 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 and that's gonna force him to use like, Usopp's rubber band or whatever, maybe desert spada, you know. So check their trash. Just be logical, right? Like you have the tools to like remove their stuff. You have Niji to like pop their Kayas, right? You have like Ichiji. If you get like a few of those out, you're kind of chilling. So, that's like a whole separate game. That kind of comes more down to like player skill. I feel like than with Reiju at least, it's definitely a winnable game. You know, and now also I haven't had a hard time with the Nell. Um, I feel like you're able to put out bodies that are big enough to like not be affected by Yamato. And if they are, it's really not a big deal, right? Like, I know when I'm playing with Dofi against Anel, and they're just constantly popping, my four cause characters with Yamato, it's like super frustrating. But with Reiju, like you just get them back. So like, and then they could be kind of starving you, whatever. Like if you put out Judge, you know, you just like straight up just go for game the next turn, and you have a full board, right? Like, you're coming at them with 6 attacks. So, in my opinion, I feel like that, Reiju should win that matchup as well. I think you rush them down to 1 life, just kind of, poke at their characters. The Ichijis help you to like reduce the big bodies to swing into. You could reduce the Yamato to a 7k, reduce Cat to a 6. Swinging into those, kind of starving them. If you have the puddings, it's super good. So, Blue Dofi. Oh, and I forgot to mention, like, Lucci's kind of representing, like, any good black deck right now. So, obviously all their playstyles are a little different. Like Gecko and the starter deck Luffy. I just feel like Lucci's the best out of those, and so it's the most efficient with like removing your board. So I think if you're gonna have a tough time, it'll be with that one. Gecko's usually okay now since they lost Great Eruption. It's been a pretty decent matchup. And then started Luffy. Same thing. You can kind of rush them down. It's a little harder when they're a 6k leader. But like I don't even think about their board. I'll just swing into life. And that's kind of the game plan in most games. It's just life. Super hard. Obviously there's times where you have to kind of fight for board presence. But in general, especially early game, just life. Boom. Force them to either counter out super hard or go down super low. And then like that changes their play style, right? They have to be defensive. So Blue Doflamingo, as a Blue Doflamingo player, I actually feel like Reiju's a little favored in this matchup. I think a big thing is like Dofi playing out the characters rested. And Reiju can just swing into them, reduce, swing, and then 7 at life. you're able, it's like it's so good, but you're able to just like clear their board and swing into life. So you're forcing them to, you know, either counter to save their board or counter to save their life. Otherwise they just die. So, and, you know, like, obviously Dofi has more options the later in the game it gets. So that's why I feel like it's really important to, if you don't see Ichiji again, it makes that matchup quite a bit harder. Like if you don't see it in the early game, because then you don't have the ability to remove his board or really threaten his life. And then like you don't really want to let Dofi get that kind of momentum, because then, you know, he's swinging 7 on turn 1. Let's say he gets out like, you know, a Weevil, or yeah, let's say a Weevil, right? So then he's gonna swing like 7-8 turn 2. So then now he's putting the pressure on you. So I think going first is good. And I would go first in pretty much every matchup except for Black Yellow Luffy, which I'll get into. Yeah, going first and, you know, getting him off curve. Do it. And then last thing before I go to Black Yellow, against Bonnie, which actually I haven't mentioned yet. Sorry, I'm all over the place. So let's talk about Bonnie and then Black Yellow. Bonnie, I feel like it feels pretty 50-50 to me. Bonnie has like some really great tools, like the Hody to help clear your board. You know, the 10 drop, the Hawkins. But what I will say is like Reiju also has really good tools to deal with those, right? It's like the Hawkins, you play out Ichiji to reduce it to 5, and now it's just like a 5k blocker. So it's not that great in that, you know, in that instance. You know, by the time they 10 drop Dofi, it's usually not a big deal, because, you know, ideally when you're playing Bonnie, you want to be kind of dropping Judge around that time. And Judge is what's going to win you the match, because Judge's ability, I'm sure you guys know this, but I actually didn't know this, or like I forgot about it after I stopped playing the deck for a little bit. Judge, on your turn, you can -1 to rest an opponent's Dawn. And I totally forgot about this, because like I was only using that effect against Red Purple Law, or like in the mirror, to, you know, to get down to lower Dawn counts. And like this is the first, for me, this is the first like matchup where I'm consistently like, oh wow, like what a great tool to like just minus a Dawn and then rest their Dawn. So it forces them to like either leave 2 up, which isn't always easy, especially in the late game for them, or you just get to swing with everything. So, which like, and especially if they weren't prepared for that, if they were prepared to like rest your Ichiji when you swing with Judge, like that's gonna really hurt them. So something to keep in mind, that Judge, you really want to get out Judge. In Bonnie specifically, I like to get it out in, I try to get out in every matchup. I think that Lucci, you might not get that opportunity. Nami, you probably just want to have the Ichijis on board. It's kind of just like a waste to turn playing Judge if you already have like 3 Ichijis. Yeah, so lastly, we'll talk about Black Yellow. This is what I feel like is the toughest matchup by far. And honestly, like, I haven't really figured this one out. Um, it's just like it's so awkward because they're like a 9K leader, and it's so hard to swing into that, right? Because your biggest body's Judge, which is an 8K, but by the time you're playing Judge, you're probably pretty low on life, and they probably have blockers out also. So what's kind of worked for me is like trying to rush them down to one life, like ASAP. Um, and then just do these little weenie swings, force them to counter, because they know that you can potentially go for game. So I'll swing like 5, 6, and then if they take, boom, put everything on EGG, swing. If they keep countering, then like maybe play out a Black Maria to ramp Dawn, or like the Reiju is really good at like pivoting, in my opinion. So you can like usually have like a couple options, especially in the late game. You got a couple options in hand, so you can kind of poke, see what you get. Yeah. So, if you figure out how to beat Black Yellow consistently, I would love to know, and I'm sure everyone else would too, because I honestly feel like everything else is at worst a 50-50 matchup. When you're playing the deck correctly, I think. Um, but Luffy's so bad, it's like feels like 30-70 maybe for me. Um, yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about starting hand. So you typically want to go first, like I mentioned. I really like to see stage and big EGG. That's like a perfect starting hand for me. I definitely like to have stage, because being able to get that out turn one and then just start cycling every turn is so good. It's so good. Like, even if you don't have Porsche, guys, like getting the stage out, being able to draw into like your EGGs, Nijis, whatever, like that's how you get the momentum going. So even if you have to like kind of delay a turn, it's important to get this out. There are games you could win without it for sure, but that's if that's if your starting hands like Porsche, EGG, or like little Reiju, big Reiju, and you're playing that out and drawing a bunch of cards. So sometimes you can kind of just draw into what you need every turn, which actually it happens like enough, but in those games where you don't have stage out, you'll notice that like mid to late game you'll kind of start running out of plays. And you're like, man, I need the search. So that one's really important. Porsche, I like to have it in my starting hand, but it also depends on what everything else is. Like, if it's just Porsche and a bunch of 2Ks, I probably won't keep it, because Porsche doesn't have to be used turn 2, right? Like, you can kind of start doing stuff, and then Porsche, boom, and then like it's still really good. But I think a big thing is the EGGs, like getting those out early just applies an insane amount of pressure. It's tough to beat. Like, when you see that, it's tough. So the one matchup that's different is the mirror match. I actually like to go second, and in my starting hand, like, I want to see like a baby Reiju or a baby Yonji. And then so on turn one, on 2 Dawn, you just play it out minus whether you have the big body or not. You go down to 1 Don, you draw a card, obviously. I'll specifically use Yonji if I don't have the big body, because that one's like the least important to me to have in hand. And then it forces your opponent to be in a position where they have to Porsche into a little body, on 3 Don. So then if they can't do that, which is, you're like, having a Reiju or Yonji is not a big ask. You have 6 of those. So, having that in your starting hand going second, especially because you're drawing another card, is a lot more likely than having like Porsche and, a baby in their starting hand. And then if they don't have the big body, you're making them waste the little body. So it's like, it's a super toxic, it's a super toxic matchup. But if you're going second after you Don minus, right, you go to 3 Don your next turn. This is where I'll either Porsche, depending on what they did. Let's say they Porshed into like, I don't know, Reiju. And then, so I'll ideally Porsche into whatever, get the effect. But this is also a decent time to play out Black Maria. And then, you ramp the Don, and then you take the Don back down to 1. So then you're at, going on their next turn, they'll have 2 more Don than you. So you're asking them again to have Porsche. So you kind of like keep forcing them to be in a position where like they have to have it. So going second, like you kind of like take control of the game that way. Yeah, so definitely I like going second, getting that out. Yeah, cards to consider. I would heavily consider the pudding, obviously, like I mentioned. Chopper, I think, still decent, especially if you don't have the Black Marias. I could easily see throwing like a couple copies of Chopper in there, but I just don't feel like it's as necessary, especially with the Yonjis in the build. I think that if you're not playing Yonjis, I would probably play a couple copies of Chopper just for the chump blocker. It just feels less important now with the Black Marias, like that ramping ability. Gravity Blade. This kind of represents like Gravity Blade slash Black Bug slash Red Rock. Just some sort of like bottom decking removal to help out with the Black Yellow Luffy matchup. Personally, I haven't tried this, but I know that there are lists that have it, and there's times where it comes up, right, where it's really good. I haven't play tested it enough to know. And then Queen, kind of similar with Chopper. Like, if you're not running the Yonjis, I could see it. I just feel like it's not as, like, the effect for us is really good, right? Drawing 3, trashing 1, putting us like into like probably 6 Don next turn, 6-7 Don next turn. But it feels like a waste of a space to me. Like, it is good, but like, is it that good? I don't know. I don't know. I could see it as like a one of, but out of these, Queen's the one I wouldn't do. It seems like if I were to tech, like, my techs I consider are what's gonna help me win Black Yellow, because like I was saying earlier, is I feel like your matchups into everything else are pretty solid, and I don't feel like Queen's one of those cards. I think Chopper could, because having that chump blocker is nice, when they're swinging like 11k at your life and you're just like, blood Chopper, that feels pretty good. Pudding, same same idea. Black yellow. If they don't respect the pudding, you just boom, drop it. Gravity Blade, obviously, that card's super good against black yellow. So, anyways, yeah, that's kind of my my breakdown of Reiju. I really like where the deck's at right now, and I've been really liking this like consistent build. It's such a bad feeling to have nothing to do with your deck, and so just kind of this was me trying to like minimize that happening, and still make the deck like function really well. I feel like with you know, like with the Yonjis and stuff, it just makes like, you know, the judge play that much better. Like being able to fill the board, right, helps against like Anel, helps against Lucci or like any black matchup, or even just having that blocker so they can't like, you know, threaten lethal when you drop judges. I think it's important. I'll always be a firm believer in the Yonji. But yeah, Porsche, I think it's super good now with Black Maria, just being able to be like just mega aggro, and then drop Black Maria and go to like 8, 9, 10 Dawn is like the dumbest thing ever, but it's so good that like we have to do it, right? So yeah, guys, keep grinding. Let me know if you have any cards that you like to run in Reiju. I know I had like a couple hot takes, so like don't give me too hard of a time. I feel like this deck runs really smoothly, so before you say anything, at least try it out. And I think you'll understand, like, okay, like he knows what he's talking about a little bit. But yeah, I think that I would really love to take this deck to a big tournament. But I like that black yellow Luffy matchup is so rough. I have to figure that out first. So I got 2 regionals coming up on the 5th and the 15th, I think, or something like that. So I'm gonna play Blue Doflamingo in the first one. We'll see how it goes. If I do bad, I will probably play Reiju in the second one, and you know, maybe try to like stream those games for you guys. So we'll see how it breaks down, and we'll let you guys know. I'll keep you updated. Thanks for getting this far in the video. You know, as always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with a friend. GLG out.
Soundstripe.